This is an educational video focused on a policy proposal dubbed Medicare for All, specifically the case against Medicare for All, titled The Destruction of Choice and Competition, The Consequences of Medicare for All, a Policy and Economic Impact Overview by Kate Burma. So this video, like I said, aims at examining the rationales offered for the government's intervention in healthcare, specifically a proposal dubbed Medicare for All. I also provide explanations why interventions of this sort restrict choice and competition in the marketplace. Specifically, we will cover impact of risk pools on health insurance markets, the current structure of Medicare, I will provide an explanation of the specific policy proposal of Medicare for All. And then I will go over my perceived consequences that the economy faces with the introduction of a policy such as Medicare for All. Okay. So first, it is important to understand how health insurance markets currently work in order to understand flaws within Medicare for All. Here, I will explain how insurance markets use risk pools to share costs, keeping costs lower for more sick individuals. So here we have a spectrum of individuals. Individual A, this would be two individuals, so A1, A2. These would be lower risk individuals up to D1 and D2, which would be the most high risk individuals. In an ideal market share or risk pool, you split these individuals up so costs are more or efficiently allocated between each individual. So individual D is not paying more than individual A for healthcare. They're paying the same costs, while D's essentially receiving or has perceived higher benefits in the long run because they are a high risk individual. So over here, I'll explain how this market can become inefficient. So in plan one over here, you take, let's say, both individuals from class C and both individuals from D, and then you have both individuals from A and B over here. So this would be considered a segmented risk pool. If you go this way on my little diagram here, plan one, overall risk increases. So risk is going up because you have 4 high risk individuals. This results in plan one's premiums to increase. So cost is going up. Lower risk individuals will choose to opt out if given the chance. This creates a death spiral, term commonly referred to as a death spiral, which could occur if the concentration of high-risk individuals requires premiums that are too expensive to attract low-risk individuals, therefore separating these two risk pools. Here I'll provide an overview of what our current Medicare system looks like. Medicare is an insurance program run by the federal government. Medicare is mainly for people who are 65 and older. Medicare is not a government-planned health insurance that is separate from private funded health insurance. This is a common misconception. Although the current system is funded with tax dollars, it is widely administered by privately run health insurance companies such as Blue Cross or Cigna. So understanding Medicare for All, Senate Bill 1804, House of Representatives 676, named Medicare for All. Some of the features of this bill would distribute health care for free without cost sharing through a single payer system. A single payer system means that the government has all authority to distribute health care. Private health insurance companies or a mix of both would not be acceptable. Everyone would be forced to participate in the same insurance, dubbed single payer system, including mandatory premiums set through tax policy, centrally set all prices paid to suppliers, so doctors, hospitals, all prices are set by the government. Medicare for All would also make it illegal for private businesses to sell health insurance for a private employer to offer its employees health insurance. Creation of a government monopoly. So first I'm going to provide some characteristics of perfect competition versus monopoly so you can see some of the characteristics of Medicare for All and how that relates specifically to a government monopoly. So as we know from microecon, some characteristics of perfect competition is there are many firms. There is an undifferentiated product, meaning the product is the same. A consumer can leave and go and buy a different product without that product changing. There are no barriers to entry or exit. And in perfect competition, firms are price takers, meaning they do not have the ability to set prices because no one will buy for them if they set a higher price. So some characteristics of a monopoly are kind of just the opposite here. There is one firm producing. There are large barriers to entry. Monopoly firms are price setters versus price takers, meaning they set their own price however they see fit. An example of kind of a monopoly in the United States would probably be utility providers. There's not a lot of utility providers in a lot of areas. So some characteristics of a monopoly in relation to Medicare for All. Instead of relying on competition and choice to lower prices, Medicare for All lowers them by setting them itself. Medicare for All blocks out all competition by making it illegal to provide health insurance to individuals that are covered. Price competition in healthcare itself would also be eliminated as prices would be set by the single payer, the government. So here I'm going to provide an example of how Medicare for All pretty much eliminates competition in the government. Medicare for All's ban on private competition would be even more restrictive than healthcare plans in other countries and other government programs in the United States. So, for example, the government does not ban private schools, even though it collects taxes to run a public school system. So I'm just going to kind of draw out an example here to help you visualize what this would look like. So this is our government. This is a public school. This is a private school. And this is child one. So the government collects taxes to fund this public school. Private schools are obviously named privately funded. So the government in this example, this child one is not prohibited to attend private school, even though the government is collecting taxes to fund this school. So under this hypothetical plan, schools for all, children are forced to attend the publicly funded school with no option to attend the private school because it's not funded by taxpayer dollars. Under the Medicare for All bill, patients would have no insurance alternatives, so this is not an option. Health providers, though not government employees, would have no choice but to receive their income and instructions from the federal government, or from the relatively few people who could afford to purchase expensive medical services without insurance. Next, I think it's important for us to look at a monopoly demand curve in order to understand what Medicare for All will do to the demand for health insurance generally as the government becomes a monopoly or a single payer. So here you have a downward sloping demand curve, marginal cost, average total cost curve, and your relatively inelastic marginal revenue curve. Prices will be set where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, as we know. So we go here up to the demand curve. Prices are set relatively high here. What I want to show you is the restriction on consumer surplus that this causes, which is here. In the expansion, let's use a different color here, of economic profit or producer surplus, which would be that area there. The monopoly will produce where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. We are going to look at the financial limits under the current system, specifically copayments, coinsurance, and deductibles. Copayments, coinsurance, and deductibles keep premiums low by discouraging overconsumption of free healthcare. So these keep premiums low. Medicare for All would eliminate these out-of-pocket expenses, which sounds great, but let's take a look at what this does. So if the aggregate supply of healthcare was held unchanged, Medicare for All would reallocate healthcare to high-value uses of the system to lower-value ones, reducing health and longevity in the system. So to understand this, let's look at an example. So Joe Schmo here has a headache. He is more inclined to visit the emergency room with this not substantial injury, or under the current system, we wouldn't consider this a need to go to the emergency room. And Rachel here has a broken arm. This we see under the current system as a substantial need to visit the emergency room, or more important. Rachel is not able to visit the emergency room under this because Joe is able to visit the healthcare or to receive healthcare for little to no cost, while Rachel also is able to receive healthcare for little to no cost, but she is not able to be seen today because the ER is so backed up with more problems and more patients to see. So Rachel needs to wait 3 days before she's going to be able to be seen in the ER. So in conclusion, we see that the United States economy relies on the idea of free markets to maximize benefits for citizens. The two basic ideas of a free market are choice by consumers and competition of firms. Medicare for All will, in my view, decrease both competition and choice. A single-payer system creates a government-run monopoly and takes away the basic idea of a free market. Promoting choice and competition creates a more efficient market for everyone to receive and benefit from lower costs. Lastly, I'd like to give a special thanks to Wharton Public Policy, the Sycamore Institute, and the Council of Economic Advisors to the President in their report from March 2019. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a valuable lesson on the impacts of Medicare for All on the healthcare market.